Welcome to this episode of the Greater Phoenix Chambers podcast, Let's Talk Business Phoenix, with your host, me, Todd Sanders, President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Chamber. In each episode, we're going to tackle important issues and subjects affecting businesses, our community, and the state today. Through relevant, timely topics, this podcast serves as the business community's voice with a mission of championing business growth, identifying problems that restrict economic development, and convening community leaders to move Phoenix forward. Well, welcome to the podcast. I'm Todd Sanders, President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Chamber. We are honored to have TJ Mitchell here, who is the current chairman of the Valley Young Professionals Group at the Greater Phoenix Chamber. TJ, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here and hopefully represent VYP in a positive light. So
well, I know you will. First of all, we obviously know you have a day job too. So tell us a little bit about what you do and some of your background.
Sure. So I'm an attorney, is the day job, and don't hold it against me though. Most of what I do is we work with investment professionals doing securities and commercial litigation. It's kind of interesting. No one in my family was ever an attorney, and the law is oftentimes a profession where you get into it because your dad is an attorney, or your mom was, or your cousin, or something like that. So for me, it was kind of been an interesting experience just going into it, not knowing really anything. But and law school does not prepare you for the practice of law either. But that's
bad news.
Yes, well, and there's been a lot of actually discussion about reform and everything, making it a little bit more practical. But it really goes to show how important having mentors in the workplace is, not. We don't have to go too far ahead here, but that's one thing that I've really enjoyed about VYP is just the relationships, connections I've been able to make through VYP, and some of them have turned out to be great mentors. So
native of Arizona?
Originally from Central Pennsylvania, actually. Yeah, State College.
Far from home.
I'm a little bit far from home. State College, Pennsylvania, where Penn State is located. So both my parents are Penn State alums, and we moved out here in 2005. So I've been out here, I guess coming up on 20 years. In a couple of years, it'll be 20 years. And so Arizona is definitely home now.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Tell us something about yourself that we wouldn't find on your resume, which we sort of just encapsulated. Yeah.
Well, probably an interesting thing about me is, so when I was in undergrad, I went to undergrad down in Tucson, University of Arizona. And I was actually a cheerleader for the U of A cheer squad. So that's kind of an interesting fact that's not on the resume. So.
Thank you. Excellent. Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned VYP, which Valley Young Professionals. To me, this is my time at the Chamber was something that I felt was really important, but for a lot of time, it was hard to get right. And now I feel like we really have the right group of people and the right program. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the program and why it's important to you?
Sure. Well, where VYP is at today is in large part because the people that started it and because of the current chamber leadership like yourself that have invested a lot of time and energy in prioritizing the success of VYP. So I want to thank you for that. VYP is an organization within the chamber where individuals from 25 to 39 are able to engage. We normally do roughly monthly events, sometimes more than one a month. And those events kind of run the gamut. We'll do networking type events. We'll do volunteering events. We'll do events out in the community where young professionals are able to learn a little bit more about their community by visiting a local business or, a utility, and that's what I love about VYP is that it's not just a networking group.
Right.
It's a way for you to learn about your community by visiting local businesses, by connecting with other young professionals in other groups, in different industries. The diversity that we've worked to have in VYP, both in kind of traditional DE&I fashion, but also diversity of industry and profession and everything. That's one of the things I value the most about VYP is just being able to, I can go to an event. I don't want to talk with any more lawyers. I talk with lawyers every day.
Right, yeah.
So I can go to an event and I can, talk to somebody who, does pharmaceutical sales, or works in a bank, or something totally different. That's what we work to kind of foster an environment where people can have that kind of honest exchange and meet people that are a little different than themselves.
Well, and it's just become such a success. One of the things that I think was important to us is to also add sort of the diversity of thought to our board. And we actually have you now as you're a full-fledged member of our board of directors. Talk to us about that. Is that, for us, it's been a win. I think to have you at the table, engaging actively and bringing a different point of view has been really good. Where do you see that?
I've really felt like the relationship between Valley Young Professionals and the Chamber, I mean, obviously we're a part of the Chamber, but at no point do I really feel like we're like the little brother that's, okay, we just have to have a token young professional group. I really do feel like Valley Young Professionals is valued by the Chamber. And one of the ways that you and the Chamber leadership have done that is by allowing us to engage with the big board or the Greater Phoenix Chamber of Commerce main board. I've really enjoyed every time I've been able to go to one of the board events and participate. I've found that we've been welcomed with open arms, and the other board members, not the young professional board members, but just traditional board members, have been so welcoming and have really valued just our engagement and participation. So I found that it has been a wonderful way for us to both feel like we're engaging with the Chamber and the direction of the Chamber, and to provide kind of a different perspective as well.
Well, and I think you really bring a lot to the table, and I think that's why there's such a willingness to have you at the table. So let's talk about your year, FY23. What are some of your goals for the upcoming year?
Sure. So I think VYP, the way that leadership works, I think is probably the same as the regular board, but basically you run to be vice chair, and then you become chair the year after that. So last year when I threw my hat in the ring to be vice chair, I had three main priorities, three goals. First one was to facilitate the transition back to safe in-person events, and transition our programming, back to facilitate in-person events. Second one was I wanted to be really intentional about implementing the feedback that we got from our members. Mm-hmm. That's something that in the past we would be doing. We would send out a survey or whatever after certain events, and people would rate their events and provide some feedback and everything. And sometimes we would talk about it at a board meeting. But for me, it was I wanted to make sure that we increased our retention. And so if people are taking the time to go through and provide a survey about why they thought an event could be better, or something they really enjoyed about an event, I wanted us to be intentional about really focusing on that and utilizing that feedback in our next event. Or maybe, that event didn't turn out great. What can we learn from that? So that was important for me. And then the third priority is kind of a general idea. And I thought that if we implemented the first two priorities, that we would accomplish the third. And that's just really ensuring that VYP is the premier young professional group here in Phoenix. So I'm proud to say that was a little over a year ago that I kind of laid out those priorities. And the first one has been accomplished, that we've done a great job at transitioning back to almost all in-person events in a safe and effective way. My wife is a COVID nurse, so I get, that whole process. That was not a fun time. And so, we're still mindful about that. And when we choose locations where to host events and ways that we can do that in a smart way. So it's exciting to see, I think, the energy that's back in the room every time we have an event now. We still have people coming back to an event that say, I haven't gone to an event since before COVID. It's so great to be back.
You do see that. Let me ask you, I'm impressed with your initiative to take feedback, which is great, but also to do something about it. What was some of the feedback that you heard that you said, we need to change that? Yeah.
So I found that every year we do a board retreat. I know the Greater Phoenix Chamber does a retreat as well. So Valley Young Professionals do a traditional retreat, which, you came and spoke at it this year, so you remember. And one of the things that we do is we kind of brainstorm ideas for the next year. What are some programs? We also do kind of an inventory. What are the relationships that the board members have that we can utilize to provide excellent topical programming for our members? And I think sometimes it's easy, we'll have an idea, a great idea for an event, and we don't. One of the items of feedback that we got was, I think. So I'll give you an example. We ultimately had an event at the Suns Arena, and it was to show off the FanDuel sports book and everything, and they did a little tour of it and everything, and it was very cool. And the event started out, and we kind of had a networking segment at the beginning. They gave a little talk about the sports book, and then we got a tour. However, they broke us out into I think like 4 groups, and kind of staggered us. And so then when the first group came out of the tour, there was no one really waiting there because the other 3 groups had already started the tour. So the first group comes through and there's no one there. And so then everybody kind of leaves. And so then the second group comes out and there's no one there waiting. So then everyone kind of quietly departs as well. And I was in the last group, and I show up and I was expecting that there'd be people there still networking. Maybe we'll do an impromptu happy hour to keep that relationship building going. And I come out to the lobby and it's empty. And I'm like, that was not the goal. And so that's just one of the things. We got some feedback about that. I personally had my own feedback in experiencing that. So that was one thing, that when we have great ideas for events, let's also ensure that we're thinking through kind of the practical ramifications of those events, and what are ways that as board members, our primary responsibility is to make sure that people are getting the most out of their programming. So we even kind of did a self-diagnosis, and even though we may have been able to plan things better on the front end, the way that it ended up panning out, maybe some of the board members, we should have tried a little bit harder to keep people there, or to provide some way for the event to kind of conclude in a more manageable fashion. So.
Well, let me pivot a little bit. We've recently been talking about workforce a lot, and you hear sort of maybe anecdotally people talking about return to the office, and maybe boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, and millennials seem to be we always talk about millennials, whether it's good or bad. They're always on the agenda.
We're very popular.
You're very popular. But how are young professionals viewing sort of this return? And you're obviously, your wife didn't get an opportunity to work from home, but certainly a lot of people did. And how are you viewing that? What should business leaders be thinking about when they're looking at return to the office and young professionals?
Sure. For me, when the world shut down, right, in March or whatever it was of 2020, my position is one where we actually can work pretty effectively remotely. So we were able to transition fully remote, and I was pretty much fully remote for, a year and a half or whatever. My firm this last week actually implemented a formal policy to try to get some of the attorneys back in the office. And so we're coming in, it's not, super enforced or anything, but the goal is for us to be in 3 days a week at least. And for me, seeing that the way that the policy was implemented to me, and we're a pretty small firm, so we were able to have some conversation and everything about it. But for me, I think as a millennial, the best way for you to encourage, millennials and young professionals to get back into the office is really, I think, to sell them on what the value to them is. Because if you throw out kind of amorphous words like culture, like it's good for office morale, it's better for my morale if I'm sitting in my sweatpants working out, at home. So I think the biggest thing is, as young professionals, in the first 10, 15 years of our careers, the relationships that we form and the experience that we're able to glean from working with more experienced individuals, I think that's really some of the most important things. Because we're really, as young professionals, I can only speak as an attorney, but I assume it's true in other realms as well. You're really trying to learn your craft at that point. And some of that can be transitioned to a remote realm, right? If you guys are on a conference call or something. But a lot of it, I think is kind of picked up. My parents have a saying about parenting. So we're actually expecting. My wife is going to give birth in January. Super excited. And so we're getting all this parenting advice. Some requested, some provided, right, without request. And one of the tips that we received was more is caught than is taught. And kids pick up on things and the relationship between their parents and seeing how you treat people more than just what you tell a child, right? I think some of that is true in the workplace too, that I've learned so much from working with my mentor, who's a 75-year-old super experienced practitioner, just seeing the way that he interacts with staff, seeing the way that he has a call with opposing counsel. I've been able to learn so much more from those small kind of engagements than just him telling me, this is a better way to draft this contract or something. And so I think the value to young professionals is you maximize the exposure for those types of learning opportunities if you are in person and you're making the effort to be in person.
Well, it's such an interesting answer, because when I asked you the question, I wrote culture down, which tells me I'm on the wrong side of the ledger here. But you're right. I mean, that is what you hear. Well, we're worried about the culture. Well, what does that mean? And I think interesting answer. And I hope that some of our leaders are hearing what you've just said, because it resonates.
Well, and I'm not saying culture is a bad word.
But it's a little amorphous, right?
It is. It's amorphous, and I think it's been co-opted in some ways, just as like an excuse to get employees back into the office. I think some firms and employers are really intentional about developing, a cohesive culture, and they take great pride in that. And I think it almost does them a disservice when other employers who maybe don't really focus on that just say, oh, it's for the culture, come back in. I don't mean to say that culture is a bad word. I think
no, but I think it's sort of been a tagline. Sure. So one other thing I'd like to ask about is this term that's sort of maybe it's becoming part of the cultural norm now, that we hear quiet quitting, and a lot of folks, young professionals, seem to be doing that, and it's not. I don't think it's necessarily what it sounds like, but you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. And when we had talked before kind of about just like opportunities, I think, for young professionals generally, this kind of a movement, I guess, of quiet quitting, maybe people got very comfortable working remotely and realized, if I'm working remotely, I'm able to do a little bit less, or conversely, sometimes if an employee feels like they're not being appreciated or they're not being respected, then they might say, why am I putting in the extra effort, right? So, I mean, sometimes it can go both ways. But I think with this movement, it really does provide young professionals an opportunity to kind of raise a hand and show that initiative. And it's interesting how some of it, I think, is generational. But I found that, a lot of people that are in an older generation than me seem to appreciate so much more. I don't know if they have low expectations for millennials, like, they're not engaged, but it's almost kind of a catch-22 or kind of a strange situation. But I think the opportunity is there, for young professionals to raise a hand and to try to get involved, and also, I guess, to have just a dialogue with their employers, if they feel like they're not being appreciated for whatever reason. At least so I've worked at 2 law firms since I graduated law school, and I think both of those firms, leadership in those firms have, if you actually go to them with a concern or a question, or you have a suggestion, people care. Yeah. And I think maybe millennials or people in general just might be hesitant to kind of raise a hand and to engage in that dialogue, but I think it's worth having.
Well, it's an interesting point, and the idea that the millennials are sort of bucketed. And I always tell people who sort of disparage millennials, well, come to the chamber for a while. There are a lot of millennials there, and they're nothing like what you're describing. They're just not. Yeah. Now, they're just people, but they work really hard, and they're really good at what they do. So you have a daughter or a son on the way, probably thinking about things more globally. What's Arizona's biggest opportunity, and what's our biggest challenge coming up?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, I don't know if it's a son or a daughter. We are going to wait. We're going to do a full-on surprise.
My parents waited.
So we'll find out. Okay.
Obviously worked out.
Yeah. There you go. But no, so we're super excited about that. But yeah, I think there's opportunity and challenge, and sometimes they go hand in hand. The Valley has seen such robust growth, really over the last decade, but continuing through COVID and I was just reading some statistics. I can't quote them for you, but just the number of individuals, professionals. So this particular study was kind of like white collar professionals. Did they come into a state or did they leave a state? Like what was the net kind of thing? And I think Arizona increased by like 56% or something like that. It was like California, was a great reduction. New York was a huge reduction as well. Because, some people fled during COVID and found ways to work remotely and whatever else. So, I see that as an opportunity in some ways. Arizona has always been a state of non-natives, a lot of, like myself, right? I came from Pennsylvania. A lot of people come from other places. And when people resettle here, they're looking to make relationships. And so speaking from VYP, I'm very excited about, because we're seeing a ton of people that just moved here, coming in from different areas, different, even within the state, just coming to Phoenix from somewhere else. And so I see an opportunity there. As it relates to challenge, this is a little above my pay grade, but I think the water issues are going to be huge. And so just seeing how the Central Arizona Project and how they were kind of working through the different decisions and settlements that came out, like 3 weeks ago or something. So that's probably going to be a challenge of a generation, but I know we got great people working on it. So
well, and you weren't at our event, but that's just recently a water event, and that's exactly what they talked about. So I think you're on to something there, and I do believe that we will supersede that and continue to grow. We're gonna go ahead and finish up with a quick lightning round. Really appreciate you spending so much time with us.
Of course.
And you have heard these before, and so we'll throw a little bit of a curveball at you. So first job. In-N-Out Burger. Oh, what'd you learn from that?
Yes. Well, if you got time to lean, you got time to clean. And I mean, those In-N-Out workers work hard.
They're amazing. Aren't they?
And I was always put on buckets, which is basically I was in the back peeling the potatoes and everything before they come out. They probably put me back there because they're like, he's ugly. We don't want him to, engage with clients or anything. But those are such hard workers, and I just learned throughout that process, more about the service industry. And so I treat, people in the service industry very differently, right? Because I see the hard work that goes into that.
Well, and I think the pandemic taught us there are no unimportant jobs.
Yeah.
They just aren't. And we found that out, didn't we?
Absolutely.
You love your job now, but what would be your dream job?
Okay. So my wife and I, we love wine. And so I've always thought, it would be really cool to open a winery, up near, like Cottonwood and, Sedona. There's the name is escaping me, but there's a college up there that actually has like a viticulture program. And, so you can learn how to make wine and everything. And so I guess that's kind of a dream job, or, maybe more realistically, maybe being in-house counsel or something for a winery.
Go.
That might be an easier transition than having to learn the whole process. But
that might be a good combo, right?
Yes.
You never know. Probably the options would be nice too.
Yeah.
If not Arizona, where would it be? Pennsylvania? Where would you live?
That's a good question. So my wife is from Northern California. We do love the water and the beach and everything. So it might be Southern California, but maybe like a San Diego area. I wouldn't mind living near Torrey Pines, because then you get the city discount and you can go play a great round of golf for pretty cheap. So
probably good wine too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. And then final one. Who's your role model?
Role model. I'm going to give the corny answer, but it absolutely is my dad. He worked to put himself through Penn State in 3 years, started up like his own insurance company, sold that to MetLife, and has just busted his butt his entire life to provide for me and my sisters. And I'm so thankful for everything that he and my mom did to, to provide and give us the opportunity to succeed. So I know it's corny, but he's absolutely my role model.
Well, actually, that's the right answer.
Okay.
And you'll know that when you're a dad in January.
Yeah, so. Fair enough.
So, thank you for spending so much time with us today. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you for your leadership with our young professional groups and our group and the board of directors.
Of course. Well, thanks so much for having me. For anyone listening out there, if you have any employees 25 to 39 that you think would benefit from our programming, please have them reach out. It's a great group, and we're always looking to accept new people. So
you heard it here first. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Todd.